Welcome. I'm Harmony Slater, your host of the Finding Harmony podcast. Over the past 20 years, I've taught thousands of yoga teachers and students to explore the intersection between ancient wisdom and modern everyday life, using mind-body practices to heal, awaken, and manifest their dreams from the inside out. This podcast is a sanctuary for those feeling overwhelmed by life's challenges. Are you ready to jump in and discover how these challenges aren't actually in the way, but are the way to finding harmony? Let's invite the magic back in. Hi, welcome to the Finding Harmony podcast. I'm so happy you're here today. I'm your host, Harmony. And today we are going down under to the other side of the world to speak to our dear friend and old friend, Dan Fanthorpe. He is an osteopath, and we're talking today about injuries that he commonly sees because he mostly treats yoga practitioners, starting off in Ashtanga yoga himself and practicing for many, many years, going on to get further training to become an osteopath. We're going to look at how to maintain your practice over time and practice in a way that's sustainable to avoid some of these injuries. And then also some of the invisible injuries that many of us might have or hold still that haven't quite healed, and how to heal some of those more invisible injuries to the spirit, injuries to the soul, injuries from a community fracturing, injuries from a dysfunctional relationship with a teacher. So we're going deep. We're going beyond the body to the unseen world that we tap into when we practice Ashtanga yoga. And I think you're really going to love this episode and this conversation with Dan. And one thing that I really appreciate about Dan is that he is an entrepreneur. You know, he started off teaching Ashtanga yoga, being one of the first Ashtanga yoga teachers in his area, went on to get further training, and now has started an entirely new business as an osteopath. And so if you have a call in your heart, if you have a dream of starting your own business or expanding your teaching reach or your teaching business, whether it's in yoga, or maybe you're a healer, or maybe you're a therapist or a coach, but you would like to get more clients, to learn how to build a business from the foundation up that will be successful and that can grow over time, I would really encourage you to jump into this amazing free offer. It's happening next week, February 6th to the 8th. It's 3 days, and it's called the Dream Business Bootcamp with my business mentor, Marie Forleo. So I will drop some links in the show notes, but check out my link on my Instagram profile and also the links here in the podcast and join this free offering. There's so much content. There's so much value in this free 3-day Dream Business Bootcamp. It's going to blow your socks off. So even if you're just curious about what might be the first steps to creating clarity, creating commitment, confidence, to getting the support, to simplifying your ideas so they actually work and that you can amplify them over time, this is an amazing boot camp. I honestly can't say enough. The value is off the charts. So be sure to sign up for that if you have any interest at all in becoming a successful entrepreneur and building the business or building your dream, a dream that can support and nourish your heart, your mind, your body, your family, that you can grow over time. So without further ado, let's jump into this episode with Dan. We are here today with Russell K.
So now we have the real intro with the real music. We have the brand transformation.
Yes, we do have the new intro with the new music.
We didn't go with the railroad. We went with the Bon Iver. Is that right? Iver.
Follow the River, it's called.
So Bon Iver's listening. We will face some liability. He was the king of Scotland. Is that right? Or the king of Ireland?
I don't remember.
Ivor the Boneless.
That's another one. Yeah, Ivor the Boneless.
So I think in that spirit, we've been looking for ex-Scottish colonial peoples, very much like Ivor from...
Who work with bones?
No, I think he was just from Norway, and then colonized Ireland and Scotland, very much like our guest today, Dan Fanthorpe, who colonized New Zealand. Good for you, mate.
Yeah, well, bottom of the earth. Kia ora atamarie, guys.
Yes, thank you. Hello to you too.
Wow.
Yeah, that's our, traditional Maori greeting. We always say kia ora. Atamarie is just a morning greeting. So you would say every morning. So, yeah.
Beautiful.
Atamarie.
We have a friend, Bill Brundell, and he used to tell us stories about the Maori.
Yeah. Oh, Bill, Bill's he's a classic guy. I actually tried to catch up with him when he moved back to NZ. Amazing human, Bill. I have so much time and energy for the Bill. Yeah, but I must. So when you
say NZ, is that like the down under of the down under?
That's New Zealand.
I know, but
Z is a Z.
But like, what happens like when you go down under, but you're under the down under? It's like double under.
Are you
double down under?
I don't know. Like well, Aussies will claim that probably at the bottom of the earth, but no, we're just that little bit further away from them, so we must be better. So.
Well, you're definitely more under than the down under.
You're closer to the South Pole, right? That's why it's colder.
Yeah, it's colder. And look, it's pretty cold, especially down in south, like Stewart Island, which is like the most southern point, and it's pretty frigid down there. Meatloaf did a concert once down in Invercargill, and they consider it to be the asshole of the world.
Rest in peace, Meatloaf.
Yeah,
I miss him already.
They had like meat pies thrown at them for some reason. It's a classic.
Well, no, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, he's a meatloaf kind of guy, and you want to, share.
Share in the meat pies.
Yeah, they didn't have a good trip, that's for sure.
Oh, too bad.
That Paradise by the Dashboard Light, I dated a girl once just because she liked that song, and that was the only reason I pursued her. I went out of my way to squire this girl, because I was like, man, I love that song so much. I just want to listen to this song with you.
So you're coming to us today. We have a long history of meeting in Mysore, the mecca of the Ashtanga yoga world.
Is this one of these Ashtangi people?
Yeah.
I thought it was just like an osteo guy. Oh.
Again, I'm not another one. Talk about injuries. Talking about stuff.
Yeah. But that is kind of your expertise, because you're also an osteopath as well, right?
Yeah. So long time yogi, kind of a new time osteo. So come from obviously Ashtanga and so forth, and now practicing as an osteopath, not so much as a yoga teacher anymore, but still dabble. I love to dabble in the practice. I'm a little bit selfish these days. I kind of have my practice for myself.
Yeah, that's nice though.
It says here, and I'm looking through your bio, and like, man, we're like the same generation Ashtangi. That's cool. You don't meet many of those. It says here your mom was like a pranayama expert.
Yeah, so she's like, I would describe her as a eccentric tantric yogini that lives in the hills in Nelson in a fully self-sufficient kind of land, seeks for, goes to India seeking for Babaji, and she loves Osho and Sai Baba and those gurus, and I guess she is the part of the reason why I started yoga, but she's way more kind of out there than I would ever be, and all the practices that she does, she's a pretty committed lady to the practice. Yeah.
You described that as your first alarm clock. Her doing pranayam was how you woke up in the morning. Is that right?
Yeah,
What is that like as a wee thing?
look, yeah. So her thing was she loved Bhastrika and she loved Kapalabhati, but she also loved doing this practice where you're in shoulder stand and you inhale air through your bottom.
Yeah.
And then exhaling your air out of your bottom, which produces a rather loud sound. So
no, I don't think you can do that. I don't think
you can.
Women can for sure.
So
I'm horrified.
You should
of all the things that you've cut out of our podcast that I've said.
Look, if you try having your mates over for a sleepover and suddenly you wake up in the morning and you're hearing the sound and your mate's going, "Damn, what's that? What's that sound?" Don't worry, it's just my mum farting. You know, it's like
she's just doing her yoga practice.
It's just cleansing practice.
Oh man,
that's so funny. This is like a cautionary tale to all children of yoga practitioners.
Yeah, I know. But anyway, so I was like forced. I was dragged to yoga by my mum like twice a week, and back then it was fashionable to wear leotards and all that shenanigans. So
yeah.
Did you get that?
I was going to say old ladies in leotards, right?
Yeah, totally. So, I initially hated it, but you know, I grew to love it. I think, meditation.
And what kind of yoga was it? It was like meditation, restorative kind of.
Exactly. Yeah, real gentle hatha yoga. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you see that film, A Clockwork Orange?
No.
Oh, you haven't? So it's a Stanley Kubrick film, and there's a scene in it where this little old lady in a leotard is attacked by Malcolm McDowell, who's probably a relative of yours, and he attacks her with like a giant white phallus and kills her with it, and she's doing all kinds of fancy yoga-y stuff in her little yoga-y room, and it's like this is from the 70s, and it's like it's really the classic.
That is a classic.
Oh my gosh. I'll have to check it out.
Yes, for sure.
Malcolm McDowell, that's a Scottish name, isn't it?
Very Scottish, I think.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
So you started practicing yoga with your mom at a young age, and then how did you end up getting into the Ashtanga yoga world and scene and culture?
So Ashtanga yoga kind of came to me on my first trip to India. Actually, I had a friend that I met in Goa, and then we kind of traveled up to Varanasi, and I just completed a yoga teacher training with the IYTA, which is like International Yoga Teachers Association. It's a very gentle kind of yoga, focuses a lot more on meditation, pranayama, philosophy.
That's Swami Rama's group, is it?
Yeah. I think so. Yeah. And he had just started practicing in London, I think. I'm not too sure of his teacher, but anyway, he showed me like half primary series, and I remember being just so embarrassed that I couldn't do any of these poses, and I wasn't strong because I was just doing a really gentle practice, and I was quite young at that time. I was probably about 19, and I felt absolutely devastated that I couldn't do this practice. So I think like anybody who loves a challenge, they just go, "Oh, okay, this is the practice for me," and there you go. That was me for the next 20 plus years.
Wow.
So you were tight. You were like a professional surfer, is that right?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say professional. I'd say more free surfing, like a sponsored free surfer. I didn't really get to that stage I thought it would be part of my career because to be honest, I don't have the tenacity to compete and, travel. And usually when you're surfing different spots, you arrive, it's 1 foot or half a foot surf, it's onshore, and you have to compete in these really high, intense, competitive, aggressive situations, and it just wasn't really in my nature. So,
but you were sponsored, like they were giving you stuff to surf on, that kind of thing.
Oh
and
yeah,
outfits.
Yep. Yeah, oh yeah, they chucked me in the warehouse.
That's a big deal.
Give me, you can have whatever you want, those kind of things. But
that's amazing.
I mean,
as a kid, it was great.
Yeah,
I think if our son had that happen to him and like some outfit started giving him free clothes and free parkour stuff, he would leave home. He would get his own apartment and he'd be out the door. We said, no, they're not giving you money, sweetie. They're just giving you clothes. And he would say, I don't care. And he'd be out of here. I mean, I would be thrilling to get free stuff.
Oh yeah, it's like any kid in a chocolate factory, Willy Wonka style.
Yeah. Willy Wonka style.
Yeah, totally.
For surfers.
Yeah, for surfers.
That's amazing.
Yeah, wetties, boards, everything.
Wow.
You used to get free stuff, didn't you, Harm? You got free
from Lululemon for a while.
Oh,
so that's cool.
Well, you're an ambassador, were you?
Yeah.
I was
cool,
an
man.
Too.
Right?
I never made ambassador status, guys.
You gotta work harder.
You
guys are way.
Yeah.
I had a big poster once, but not like a free stuff.
Really? In Lululemon?
No, I got a what do you call it?
You got a billboard.
I got a billboard in Taiwan. I was big in Taiwan.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's
big,
better than anything I had.
Yeah.
I exploited Richard Freeman once. He came to visit and I made him do something I'm still embarrassed by. I had him stand by the poster and I made him point at it and I took a photo.
Sure, he enjoyed it.
I was like, I just totally exploited my friendship with Richard. I feel fucking terrible about it. But I'm sorry. I still can't wrap my head around why, and I'm just reading this now, but why you would give up competitive surfing and free stuff to go fucking do yoga. Like, why would you do that? What happened to you?
Look, I don't know. I maybe it's karma. Maybe it's due to my mum living multiple lives of yoga, or I don't know. You know how your different personalities fit different vocations. For me, I think yoga was that vocation.
You described a kind of metaphysical experience that seemed to change you, and I was trying to get you to dig into that.
Yeah. So look, there was I was forced to kind of, well, I wouldn't say forced, but schooling for me was quite difficult. My parents kind of had a sudden breakup when I was kind of 14, 15. So I kind of said, fuck it to school. I'm just going to go surfing for a couple of years. I actually lived in a teepee for a couple of years. I strapped it to my van and just traveled around NZ for a couple of years.
Wow.
And during that time, I met a Baba, I think he was a Kriya yogi, and I got initiated into this meditation technique that basically just blew my mind. It was just related to a DMT experience, if you've ever had a DMT experience.
Really?
Oh yeah, fully out there, what I could kind of almost relate to like a Shaktipat or something that was so influential into my practice that I was like, wow, what is this? And that's kind of set that precedent for inquiry into my inner self and what I kind of believed to be real and not real, and the whole separation of duality from non-duality, consciousness from matter. So I guess that was my kind of spiritual awakening. And that I met that guy when I was 17. So
Wow.
yeah, and that was that kind of the time where I was like into a lot of drugs and alcohol and
Yeah.
the destructive nature of any teenager.
Yeah.
But it's they often kind of go hand in hand with spiritually emergent sensations and experiences where you do sort of start to see that reality is a construct that you're kind of making yourself, and it as our friend Rolf liked to tell us, it's a kind of a way to kick the door down, so at least you know where the door is, that there is a door and that there's a way to walk through it, and then of course you have to kind of get healthy and try and clean yourself up so that you can actually have these experiences in a settled way that doesn't lead you down the tulip path to schizophrenia.
Totally. That's a great way to put it. Yeah, it is, because it's like schizophrenia is, I don't know, what's the line between normalcy and schizophrenia,
Yeah.
Is schizophrenia a spiritual awakening, and the rest of us are just fumbling around in this crazy existence, just trying to do our best.
Yeah. So then you had this spirit. Was that what inspired you to go to India, or what inspired you to leave New Zealand and go to India?
Exactly. So I decided to go, okay, how much can I handle? So I went to why I went to Varanasi, to just sit on a burning ghat and actually watch life and the different kind of reality around me. So I sat on the Asigat for a couple of good weeks and just watch life pass in front of me, or life and death. And as you know, with India, you have your best and worst experiences especially on your first trip.
Yeah, it's true.
You said a couple weeks, not like a couple hours, but like a couple weeks.
So a couple weeks.
So can you tell me what that's like? Like you got to eat and you have to sleep. Those are things that are difficult in a strange place, just on the side of a river like that.
Yeah. Oh, look, I had the best time. I was doing my yoga practice in the morning and sitting and meditating by the burning ghats, and it was a fantastic time. But I do remember, when I got home to New Zealand, first thing I did was bend down and kiss the grass. my home of safety.
Were you sleeping rough on the street? Were you just begging for food? Did you have enough money for anything like that?
Oh, look, I was saved enough money off, because at the time I was surfing for. I was sponsored surfing for Jenny Shipley, who was the Prime Minister at the time. So I was on the dole, and I saved up $2,000. So I was staying in a low class budget hotel by.
Oh, right. Not on the street.
Oh, yeah, okay, God, no. That would be too much.
Yeah, that's a bit too much. Yeah. That's what I was imagining.
Very intense.
Wow. Yeah. I was like, man, he's just sleeping there.
Not Shantaram style, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's what I was imagining. Exactly.
Amazing. Amazing. No. So then
you had enough money for an idli in the morning.
Definitely. Yeah. Couple of idlis, couple of doses.
Yeah. Did you ever have a bong lassi there?
A bong lassi? Oh, yeah, definitely. And a bung chai. Was my preferred.
Yeah.
And some of that stuff is crazy strong.
Yeah.
My first trip to India, in the first week, someone offered me a normal chai, and I hadn't had caffeine for 7 to 10 years, maybe about 7 years.
Oh, wow.
And I had this normal, just street chai, and I had a full-on psychedelic regression. and I couldn't drive. I was like, I cannot get home this way. I'm having a kaleidoscopic vision.
Oh my gosh.
And I can't speak clearly, and from fucking caffeine, I'm totally fucked.
Maybe
right
it
now.
had a little extra spice in it.
It was the Gokul chats and fucking Gokulam.
That actually happened to me, not so intensely, but I did the Panchakarma with Dr. Kumar in Mysore for like 10 days or whatever, with all the cleansing and purification, and you're only having khichdi to eat and nothing else, and then finished up with that and the whole purgative effect, and then went and had a chai like the next day. And it was like a full on like, whoa. Like magical kind of experience. I was like, this is what caffeine does to you? No wonder I like it so much.
Wow.
Yeah. Because you can like, I hear people get really like quite crazy after like Panchakarma. Like
a little bit, yeah.
Like pure self is too pure.
Too pure. Yeah, exactly. So let's go back to the Mysore then. So you started practicing Ashtanga and you started seeking out teachers, I think. In Australia?
So God, where did I go from there? So I actually
you have a grumpy Iyengar teacher.
Oh yeah. So I actually
let's start with that.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So I was in Christchurch, and I used to call it Sergeant Wendy, and this was when I got back from India, and I landed in Christchurch for a little bit, and because my mum was she was working in a Iyengar studio at the time in Nelson, and I was like, I'm going to give Iyengar a go and see if I like it and see if I wanted to go down that route as well. Mm-hmm. And so I met Wendy, and like she was brutal. She was a big lady, had a bung hip, so she was limping around the room, yelling at us with a stick, and like it was like a real breakdown of the ego. Hey, I'm gonna force you to look at yourself by me yelling at you and hitting you with my stick, which as a young kid I loved, because I loved that sense that I was not in control. And would just do it for me, and so I love that. But it wasn't until I kind of moved to Australia in 2003 where I met like Matt Sweeney and Louisa Sayers, and I did a 9-month teacher training, which is pretty amazing. It was 6 days a week, probably about 6 to 8 hours a day. So it wasn't your average yoga teacher training. And we had an amazing tantric teacher there, Clive Sheridan, who was fabulous. Another Ashtanga teacher, Constantine, and a bunch of philosophy teachers, and our pranayama teacher named Rainbow. And it was basically it was his mission to basically like blow us up. He was he used to come to class high as a kite, absolutely off his chops. And we would be doing these crazy like pranayama routines, and we'd all walk out just going, like off our totally off our heads.
Yeah, hyper oxygenated.
Yeah, it was. But after that, 2004, I moved to Sydney, and that's when I started to work with Eileen Hall and and with Mark Roberts. And a bunch of the other guys. I just got there, I think, before Peter Sanson left and Matthew Sweeney left. So, I got to work with Eileen, and Eileen taught me so much. And, she's the person that really set the tradition and the love of the practice for me, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I had, when I first started going to a yoga studio every day, that's even all the way in Chicago, we heard about Matt Sweeney. We'd hear about this wonderkind in Australia was practicing 7 hours a day, twice a day, and I was like, this guy, that's what I wanted. I wanted that. I'm like, yeah, I want to be that guy. I want people to fucking talk about me on the other side of the planet,
Well, he's got all those posters that are so famous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you seen the posters of him?
Got the fucking book in my closet, man. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I took his book actually to Mysore with me, and then I added a 5th series section to it, and I was hand drawing them. I was watching Mark Yao do his practice, and I would hand draw additional postures from what I was learning practicing next to Mark Yao.
Wow.
And I still got it. I still got the book with the notes in it. Yeah.
Man, you got to publish that. I'd love to see that. I would totally love to see that.
I only got about like a 3rd through 5th before he went insane.
He quit.
Kind of. I guess you could see the way you could say it.
No.
Another thing you said that I wanted to pick up on, which is really cool, was your Iyengar teacher, Sergeant Wendy, had a bad hip. And I had heard this dichotomy or pattern. I'd heard this somewhere years ago. Yeah, Iyengar teachers or Iyengar students with the bad hips and Ashtanga students with the bad knees. Like have you heard that sort of thing before?
Oh, you look, definitely. And I guess this is the one big thing that, like when you compare the Iyengar yogis in the 80s compared to the 90s, compared to the 2000s and on, it's like, the way that Trikonasana was taught in the 80s in comparison to the 90s, in comparison to the 2000s is very different. So a lot of the stuff that's carried on through, like even our lineage, like the squared hips, in those asymmetrical positions like Trikonasana, Pajvakonasana, completely kind of out of date. And you still hear the teachers cue certain things or alignment cues, but they're totally teaching them completely differently these days. It's interesting. Yeah. Because back in 80s, 90s, Iyengar teachers started to get SIJ problems because they were just keeping the hips really rigid and open. And then Mr. Iyengar or the Iyengars decided, okay, let's, turn the hip a little bit more forward and, use your internal rotation of the outer thigh and then lift through the pubis, through the perineum a little bit more, so you're actually connecting a little bit more through the pelvic floor, which makes a lot more sense because then that connects into the bandhas a little bit better and moves the energy up the spine a little bit better. So it's those little things. But if you're open in the hips, the desire is to get the hips more open, but that can be really counterintuitive to the posterior chain or to the SIJs, especially if you've got a hypermobility. Okay, if you're a rugby player and those SIJs aren't moving, but I know I'll get slack because some chiros and osteos will go, but the SIJs don't move.
Yeah, they do. Those people have never been pregnant.
Yeah, exactly. Or
they've never fucking. No, they just get frozen by the time you're 20. It's like, you can unfreeze that fucking thing too. Move it, and that can hurt like a motherfucker in Mysore when you're trying to fucking. I
remember at one point I used to have a lot of movement in my SI joints. Even like doing Kapalabhati, I would get like a click, 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 and I would feel it in the back of my sacrum.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. It's like over time, I think because I also don't do as extreme things as I used to, it feels like a lot more stable. Sure. But that is one thing that I think is something that shows up a lot in yoga practitioners. If you're constantly focused on creating more and more flexibility, especially as you age, it can create some problems. And is that what you've seen as well as an osteopath?
Yeah, definitely. It's a real knife edge that we deal with every day. the concept of load versus capacity is not really understood, I think, in our system. And as teachers, what is your capacity based on your load, which is, obviously it's a daily examination, and how you look, do I suffer from, sun salute to, finishing pose, or do I decide to do that extra day of third series? Am I just going to push through it mentally just to get there, just to say that I've done it, or do I? That's that knife edge that at some point we've got to go. Or most points, things will break at that point if we're not intelligent and intuitive with our daily practice. And it's not really usually what I see in my practice with Ashtanga yogis is it's not big injuries, but it's really small injuries that compound upon each other, that don't get looked at, that end up being these massive things later on in life. That little niggly hip, or that little niggly SIJ, or that hamstring tear that you've never rehabbed, or the big one for me is the psoas tendon, iliopsoas tendinous insertion, where you go and put your leg behind your head every single day, and it's a little bit niggly, but you keep compounding it, and suddenly you got the degenerative hip, and your labrum starts to wear, and
What about like a degenerative lumbar thoracic joint, or a degenerative sacral joint? Like, because that I feel like that's something that started to happen for me pretty badly, is as I was putting the foot behind my head every day, and then I started to be aware that I was getting spasms in the whatever those fucking muscles are called,
like your QLs or your
the QLs,
the spine, the ones that stabilize your spine.
QL. Well, I think the QLs is the right one. I was thinking of the S word, or the rhomboids, but I think actually the QLs.
Yeah, like QLs are a stabilizer, especially if you go from flexion to extension, because those quadratus lumborum is like it's a respiratory stabilizer, and it also it's like your psoas's best friend, and obviously it has a common attachment with the diaphragm through the arcuate ligament. So it's like when you breathe, when you flex forward, it's just, it's put a lot of loads put on it. And then especially, how you kind of put your leg behind your head and you just slightly twist.
Yeah.
I don't know if you bring your shoulder forward just to try and get that shoulder under.
Yeah.
Doesn't like that.
No, it doesn't. I've had, when you said respiratory, I wonder if you could talk more about that, because the number of I was just telling Harmony this right before we got online, is that just about once a week or once every 2 weeks, they would go out, the QLs would go out, I'd go into spasm, and I couldn't breathe. And I would have to kind of somehow figure out a way to get home so I could lie down.
I know, it's that really acute muscle spasm that when we talk about non-specific lower back pain, it's probably the most common, I think, injury. And whether it's a primary injury or a secondary injury, meaning like you might have a little muscle strain or sprain, meaning a little like microfiber tear, but then your muscles around that surrounding area just go into like protect mode, like I don't want you to move. It's like putting a cast on you. Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. And like, how do you deal with that? Do you deal with the muscle spasm first, or you just, you go to the whole reduced pain ice protocol?
I referred to it as a grand mal seizure, and it was like I would say to myself, "Oh, I'm having a grand mal muscle contraction," and people would struggle to kind of understand what I mean, but like, I can't breathe, I can't move, I can't stand up or lie down. This is what's happening. And in my yoga practice, it was about twice a month. When I was working on third and second, I could guarantee it would happen twice a month.
Yeah. Oh, look, if it affects your breathing, you know that, you know, the muscles, even slightly attached to that respiratory diaphragm. And it also can be, I think, from the pelvic diaphragm too, but it's mainly, if it hurts to breathe, you know, it's you've got a pretty acute muscle spasm. Yeah. But it's painful,
I wondered,
man.
Yeah.
It's
I wondered,
so painful.
and it led to all sorts of drug abuse. And I wondered if it stemmed from like the way that I was rounding my lower spine, and then maybe creating. Now I've had it all X-rayed and MRI'd, and I know I'm riddled with osteoarthritis. And I'm wondering if the rounding maybe improperly led to this whole condition, which I now.
Well, you also have bone spurs as well, which can create that inflammation or irritation of the muscles, I think, right?
Exactly.
And degeneration.
And I think, like coming back to that load versus capacity, is which joints do you load? You know, if you know, we talk about like Wolf's law. You know, like bone will develop based on the pressure or load applied to it. So if you load certain segments, of course you're going to get extra bone growth there. If unfortunately, right. But then, you know, there's always going to be a genetic disposition towards bony growths and spurs. But then again, you know, if you stick 100 people in a X-ray machine, 50 people have pain and 50 people don't have pain. They're all going to have some form of degeneration.
Right.
It's just, I think a lot of the time as yogis, we're just so hypersensitive. Like we've got these fine-tuned machines that are so receptive to input that, you know, any slightest degree of pain or pain sensitivity or feedback that we're getting is like amplified.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
well, the paradox here for me is that I'm like 2 or 3 years into severely cutting back my practice to almost a non-existent state.
And I'm now stretching.
Sorry?
Gentle stretching.
Gentle stretching is what I do. Very gentle stretching. And I'm having the least pain I've had since I was a mid-teenager, since I was 15, 16. That's when the real pain in my body started, and that's when I started doing yoga. And then I was in pain, really massive pain the entire time.
Off and on.
Every grand mal seizures, every fucking, you know.
Every couple of weeks, you said.
And every couple of weeks, yeah. And then now I feel great.
Yeah, there's something to say about having like functional strength and functional mobility.
Yeah.
And what works for you. Like, and I'm the same, Russell. Like I don't do certain poses now because I know it's not going to contribute to my future body. So, you know, what's the point? Like, I love the practice. Nothing changes with the philosophy and the understanding, but that sensibility just comes into mind. And as an osteopath, you know, like if I was to if I teach students now, like suddenly I'm like analyzing their genetic disposition. How much elastin do you actually have with your type 1, type 2 collagen? Right. Are you on the hypermobile spectrum? Because I'm going to work with you totally different on functional strength versus someone that is coming with, you know, a stiffer collagen type, and then, you know, okay, we're going to work on more passive flexibility.
What's your measurement tool for that?
Yeah, how can you tell?
Oh, well, you guys will. It's pretty easy. You look at down dog, see if they hyperextend their elbows. 2, do they collapse their shoulders forward in low plank? Can they hold themselves in low plank? Do they lock their knees back? Yeah.
Wow.
Those visually, it is like so easy to tell whether you're on that mobile spectrum.
I thought you were like just taking a syringe into their bones and pulling it out.
I wish
doing the electron microscope. Wow. Just looking at them.
Yeah, it's pretty, like when you pick up tissue, even just pulling your skin, if you've got more elast in the skin, it's going to be a little bit more mobile. But I don't recommend teachers going and to new students
pinching their students.
But no, you can absolutely. I can remember every single person who I felt who I knew had a 5th series practice or a 4th series practice in their body. Because as soon as I put my hands on them, there was a sense that I was putting my hands into dough.
Exactly.
Like, oh, wow. Yeah. Depth of low vibration. It was just like, this person can do anything.
Exactly. And do you know what is the worst thing about hypermobile people is, like, this is based on just my pure observation, is that because the tissue's more elastile, their recovery is a lot quicker. So they don't actually get like delayed onset muscle soreness, or DOMS as we call it, as much as us stiffer kind of people. So the more likely to keep pushing through the cycle, because they don't have a sense or perception of their
sensitivity.
Yeah, they're not getting the pain feedback.
I could tell that in Mysore, in Gokulam, that those 4th series practitioners were not needing the recovery that I needed.
Exactly,
which is why I was taking the drugs that I was taking. Because I was like, I have to compete with this, and I'm not competitive because I can't practice every day the way that they can.
Exactly, and I'm in your boat, Russell. Like, give me drugs just so I can practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not really that healthy, is it? For like yoga?
No. Is it? No. But just as well, like Valium was so readily available at the chemist.
Yeah.
Every fucking street corner.
You don't need a prescription for it.
You can get the amazing drugs you can get just at the street corner. Muscle relaxant. Oh my God.
It's interesting. I'd love to talk to you too a little bit about that psoas tear / issue, because it's interesting. I had a student once who was quite hyper mobile in her joints, and she ended up tearing her labrum. Just by like popping her hip, like how you can do that kind of pop. Sometimes it happens in Trikonasana by accident. And it's quite something to recover from. But even for myself, I've had this hip thing for so long, and I went to even an osteopathic doctor to get it looked at, because whenever I'm inflamed, it flares up so much, and it's like a terrible aching. And I've been able to, in my unprofessional opinion, I think it's the psoas.
I love it. Yeah.
But the hip doctor, because there's flexibility there, they just look at me and they're like, yeah, you don't have a problem. And I'm like, no, but it's actually quite irritating. It's a problem.
It's a huge problem. But
and they're like, but look at your range of motion. I'm like, I know, but still.
Yeah, I know. Look, tendons, tendinopathies, tendinitis, tendinosis, tendinopathies are just the hardest things to rehab, because the primary management is to unload them, and if you don't unload them, then they're just going to be angry all the time.
Yeah, that's the thing. If I don't practice, if I don't do intense practice, like leg behind the head, it's fine. But as soon as I start trying to put the leg behind the head again, it screams at me.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, oh man. And it doesn't do it in the posture, it does it after.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you're walking around, you're going, oh, things don't feel right. Yeah, definitely. I know. I'm
you know it all.
Yeah, I'm rehabbing mine as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's taken about 2 years, I think, to rehab my psoas tendon.
Yeah. So what would you do? How would you help someone who wants to kind of rehab their psoas tendon?
They're not going to like this. But look, anything that has pull or effect on the psoas is, you just want to kind of restrict. And the first key is bring down inflammation. Inflammation has a life cycle around 2 to 3 weeks. Because obviously inflammation is the pain generator. It's the thing that tells you that you're in pain and something's wrong and not to move it. If you listen to that and rest, the next thing is we've got to reload it. So we've got to apply pressure to different parts of the tendon, or the healthy part of the tendon, to kind of, I guess, support the bad part. Mm-hmm. Once that kind of is in play, it's supporting the bad part of the tendon, then we can start to reload it through sport-specific exercise, which means functional strength and conditioning, and supporting of like muscles that support that psoas, like your core through your glutes. And if there is any imbalance in the hip, pelvic, lower back, then we're working on those muscles just to create an environment of, love and support for the psoas. Yeah. So there's a lot to it.
And I do have an imbalanced pelvis and scoliosis, and like there's all kinds of things going on in there that are creating this chronic condition that like was very not noticeable at the beginning, and there was things I could do, like put pressure on the TFL that would help to kind of ease that sensation, but then after a while it was just kind of chronic nagging pain.
That's that chronic nagging pain is usually that indicator that you keep like aggravating it. It's like hamstring tears.
Right. Yeah.
I don't mean to brag, but I may have the worst hamstring injury that anyone's ever had.
Have you? Please tell.
Do you want to hear about it? Do you remember who's the lady in Houston who is the physio?
Rachel Nystrom.
Oh, she's awesome. So she's like you. She has this extraordinary lens that she can look around and just see things. And she was on the phone with you, and she said, "Oh yeah, Russell's got that hamstring tear." Mm-hmm. And I hadn't talked to her anything at all about it. And you said, "What?" Said, "Oh yeah, the veins are bulging up in his calf."
The hamstring.
And you can see that only happens when you've lost the insertion of your hamstring in your pelvis.
One of the hamstrings.
One of the hamstrings. Okay. And it was like, wow, that's fucking good.
He just observed it and remembered.
Just observed it, didn't talk to me about it, told you about it on the phone. And I was like, man, I had to really think about some life decisions about whether or not I wanted to study to, get a PhD in physio or osteopathy, because like, that's amazing to be able to see that and then really like profoundly know your craft. That's what I was really stunned by.
Yeah, it's torture, like, walking around in public, just analyzing everybody's gait. I tell you, you're just going, oh yeah, you almost need a business card every time you walk past somebody. I could probably fix that medial ligament. I could probably fix that hip joint. Come on, you don't need to be in that much pain, buddy. Yeah,
wow.
Like it's even worse. And this is like the mental torture in yoga, going to a yoga class and just looking around, not that I look around the room, but I do. And just watching people's practices and going, oh man, yeah.
Wow.
You just want to say something, but it's just not obviously your place. But, and then they come to see you in the practice and you go, okay.
In a couple months, they're knocking on your door.
Yeah, exactly. But this is my thing though. It's like my sort of style is such an amazing opportunity for teachers and students to work through their injuries, but it's just like there's just no platform for not that I kind of know for us to kind of learn how we could deal with it. For teachers to actually deal with these injuries, like real basic things like understanding what inflammation is and what part of inflammation cycle you're trapped in and what you need to do to unload things. because we would have happy practices all the time.
Yeah, and I think you're right. The Mysore style, or the Mysore, method is very unique because each student can work at their own pace, at their own timing. You don't have to keep up with a group. It's it's a set sequence, yes, but depending on the teacher, it can be quite flexible. So it can really be a place of rehabilitation and healing
instead of competitive driven sadomasochists.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be that kind of rigid achieve kind of approach. It can be quite therapeutic in nature.
Oh yeah, like to even I would so love to be able to send like a cancer patient to a muscle style just to do some liver bolster and breathe.
Yeah.
Or it's just I feel like there's a huge missed opportunity because like primary healthcare practitioners are sending patients to yoga. They're just randomly saying, hey, go to yoga. I think you should try yoga.
They don't say which one.
No, they don't say which one. They don't know. They could be thrown into a Bikram class or a Inferno Pilates or a hot yoga class.
Yeah, it is interesting. It's it is sort of a panacea that often gets thrown out there, like, oh, you should go do some yoga. But again, like you've just sort of brought up, depending on the style, it might not actually be therapeutic for what the person's working through.
No, and if they are working through like that example of a hamstring tear or a tendinopathy, like most yoga teachers would go cross-eyed, or they'll just say the standard thing, which is, I want you to listen to your body and don't push past your limitations, which is like the standard thing that I hear all the time, which is kind of, to me, just an excuse of going, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, so I'm just going to let you like decide what you do and don't do, which is...
We have to acknowledge that we don't know what the fuck we're talking about if we're ever going to learn anything.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. But look, if we could, and this is my mission at the moment, is just to try and have a platform where, yoga teachers can start to understand the real basics, and like yoga students can have the right understanding of how to triage themselves. Like, rather than going on the Dr. Google or the social media and getting all these random comments of, I've got a pain in my back, what do I do? Has anybody had any experience with that? I'm like, 1,000 people have had lower back issues. I think it's, what I've got. Sounds like what I had in 1973.
So what would be your advice? Like if someone has pain that they suspect might be an injury, and this was also a thing in Mysore because you could get MRIs for very low cost. So then like everyone's going to get an MRI.
Yeah, totally.
Which isn't necessarily that helpful either, right? So what would you recommend?
Look, if someone's got an injury and it's like, well, like what is an injury to start with? And, you got to realize for the physical injury, it's something that takes you away from your state of balance or the thing that you can no longer do anymore. And that is whether it's just an ache or a pain that's, acute, subacute or chronic. If it's acute, the thing is what you want to do is just rest. If you rest for 2 weeks, you can generally, there's no point, unless it's like a broken bone or like something really like where you cannot walk and you're really concerned, then go get a scan. But usually if it's a, say like something that's torn, it usually takes a little while for the scar tissue to kind of build up, and then it comes up on an x-ray, unless, you might be able to tell due to bruising or inflammation what type of like tear it could be if it was a muscle or a ligament tendon. But usually in saying you've got to let the inflammation kind of settle for a little bit before you can really understand which tissue type has been torn or healed or injured.
Right.
Yeah. If it's like subacute or chronic, like say your hip tendon or your lower back pain that's just not going away, there's a whole other set of protocols that you can kind of do, and that's like go and see somebody, that physio, osteo, chiro. Obviously, your GP can be your first port of call if you're in so much pain. But I know a lot of people don't trust the medical system, and I feel they're not utilizing the medical system maybe because they haven't found the right GP, or they don't have a local GP in the area that understands yoga, or
I had heard once like a yoga student bringing in like the whole, primary and second sequence, to their doctor or their specialist that they were working with, and they're like, so can I do like these? Like pointing out the posture.
Yeah, no, don't do that.
Doctor's like, I don't know. Can you?
Yeah, exactly. Like, totally. Exactly. No, don't go to, unless your practitioner knows Ashtanga yoga. Like, they're just going to look at you and go, what? Are you a bloody idiot? Like, why are you doing that to your body? Because it's my spiritual practice. No. Like, some form of movement therapist is going to be way better to go to as your first port of call, and preferably someone that actually knows a little bit about yoga and different articulations and possible mechanisms of injury. But also, and this is what I wanted to ask you guys actually, your thoughts on adjustments, and what is your perception of putting somebody into a position? Is it safe? Is it
it's
too much?
But it's so. What I stress to people who want to adjust, and Harmony, I think would agree, is that there has to be consent. And there's consent even nonverbal consent, where someone's consented to be adjusted, and then you sit down and adjust them, and then you actually have to really, really listen to what their body is telling you. And there has to be consent nonverbally, because their mind may be telling them, like, I want to be adjusted as hard as I fucking can, and their body is telling you something different. And so I feel like listening to vibration and listening to that, is this a safe situation or not? Because if they are wide open and hypermobile, then that's incredibly dangerous. And if they're stiff, that can often be really, much safer, because you know where the limit is.
But you can also push past those limits and injure people too, even when they are stiff through physical adjustments. I love physical adjustments when they're done well. So personally, I'm like, I love them and I find them so helpful and beneficial, although I almost never practice with someone who's actually adjusting anymore.
Exactly.
But I remember what it was like. And I think there's something too. I mean, I also really believe in the healing properties of touch, and that touch can be incredibly healing on multiple levels, and that as humans, we're meant to be touched. And I think as far as adjustments go, I think that needs to be the underlying emphasis in the adjustments, is really about like helping someone relax into whatever place their body wants to be so that they can heal, because the healing doesn't happen when you're pushing or striving or like fighting or holding on to tension, right? Healing happens when your nervous system can move into that place where it feels safe and relaxed. And so for me, that's always how I like to approach adjusting students. And it's also how I like to be adjusted when there's someone in the room who I feel very safe and comfortable with, and they put their hands on my body and I feel like, oh, like a massage, right? You're just like, oh, thank God this person's touching me.
But also thank God this person's hands are knowledgeable.
Yeah.
You can feel that.
You can feel that. So I think there's, I mean, unfortunately, maybe there's some mistakes that get made on the way to having that kind of intelligence in your hand.
Or you got to learn.
Exactly. But I guess like those subtle adjustments are beautiful, like what you're talking about. Whereas those bigger adjustments are like, we all know the bigger adjustments, and
you got to be careful with them.
How are you going to put your hands on your own calves without a big adjustment?
Exactly. But but actually with what you just said, Harmony, I really love, because obviously if we look at, say, like mental, spiritual injuries, like physical touch is so important. And
so important.
Because as teachers, we're psychologists, we're everything for everybody, But when we look at, say, mental injuries, and I'd love to get your thoughts on mental, spiritual injuries, especially within our system, and how you guys deal with them, and whether you've seen them like increase since, with the whole thing with Guruji and the Me Too movement, and like for instance, like I lost a lot of trust in the system. And that's one of the reasons why I became an osteopath. Suddenly the whole theory, the philosophy didn't make sense anymore. And I found a huge mental struggle to practice. And suddenly my teacher
did we. We also lost faith in practice.
I think we also had a mental, emotional, spiritual injury as well that we've been healing.
Collapse.
Exactly. And I just don't think we've really, as a system, talked or even touched upon it in many ways. And I know you've touched upon it in the podcast, but as a spiritual injury, like imagine how many people out there are just like going, fuck, I have just lost a huge part of myself.
There's a kind of I'm sorry, I'm trying to interrupt you, and it probably picks up on the sound, but just to say that there was a mental construct of Guruji as a figure that acted as a kind of personal bhakti deva in your mind, right? And you're like, I'm practicing for this guy. And then that gets clubbed, and you no longer have this mental construct available. And you sit there at the top of your mat like, I don't have any fucking reason to do this anymore. Like, it's gone. And people say, oh, well, no, Sharat's my teacher's like, yeah, great. That was not for me, though. And so I don't have a reason to practice. I got to figure out a reason why I'm doing this now. What is it that I'm doing this for? Because I used to be for that guy.
But
that's gone.
I think even deeper than that.
There's grief.
Yeah, there's grief, but there's also, it's not just the person. It's everything that emanated from that person, which is the entire system, right? And so it's not just the person. If it was just the person, then you could, maybe just transfer it to another person. But if you're like, identity, your heart, your mind, your soul is connected to this practice and the teachings that this person was emanating, and the philosophy and the culture and the community, and then that all kind of crumbles into dust, then you're kind of left at that spiritual ground zero, which is back to the fundamental question of who am I?
Exactly. And maybe that's all our lesson and our practice.
And I think
to look at that and make those choices, and maybe that's why we're here.
Totally. And it's so, I love that you bring this up, because I think it's so deep and so, so profound. And in one way, it's really good, because at some point in your life, I think no matter who you're putting up on that pedestal or what you're putting up on that pedestal, you're going to end up at that ground zero. You know, maybe it's on your deathbed.
Yeah.
But hopefully it happens a little sooner than that, because then you have to start to excavate the human experience and like what is real and what matters and what is true and who am I, you know, what am I here to do on this planet?
Exactly.
You start to ask these really important questions that aren't just what you've been spoon-fed from a system or from a guru or from a culture or a community. And then you get to make some choices within that too, right?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Wow.
They're definitely tearing off the Band-Aid.
At the same time, you know, I'm sitting here in half lotus. I'm using my bandhas. I'm using my Uddiyana bandha to make sure I'm breathing properly. I'm trying to stay self-regulated.
Yeah.
And that's a completely different experience than, say, you know, my cousins are having if they happen to listen to this podcast. They're not sitting and breathing, practicing yoga the same at all, or in the same way, say. But it's just, it had to make, I'm just to say, it had a real effect on us. It was an intervention into our cultural habits of just sitting in a chair or an easy chair, you know, and not using our bandhas, not sitting properly, you know. It had a real positive effect on us.
Totally. And I think that's like when you hit that sort of ground zero, that obstacle, that spiritual injury, then you're doing that. You're looking at like what remains, like what, like, you know, and you're asking that question, like who am I and what's with me still? And yeah, it is like all of these ways that this intense practice has changed your nervous system, has changed the way that you see bodies, has changed the way that you approach life, parenthood, other human beings, right?
Yeah.
And then you get to build a new foundation or a new sort of experience of life.
What's here in the rubble that we can make use of?
Yeah, but I think that process, it can take a long time, like any injury of healing, right? It's not something that you get to just kind of like recover from the next day. And I think, I mean, I don't know if it's particularly our generation that feels this internal struggle so much, maybe because we were in between teachers in a way, right? We kind of had Patabi Joyce as our teacher and we kind of had Sharad as our teacher. And if you were sort of not someone who fully like went just like full on into like, out with the old, in with the new, right? If you were kind of still stuck in that space, I think it affected us in a really real way, because also we had a lot of input from senior teachers in the community. So we were really indoctrinated from these senior teachers into this system of yoga.
And happily so. I was happily indoctrinated.
Yeah, we absorbed it all like little sponges.
Give me more rules.
Blindly, definitely. Like the way that I look at my innocence back then, I'm just like, what were you doing? But I absolutely loved the system. But I think that's right. You know, the more you love it, the more you just totally give all yourself over to that system. Yeah, the more it bloody hurts when it's gone.
Yeah.
But I'm just, you know, with the new kind of generation coming through, I wonder, you know, I just wouldn't like it to happen to them. You know what I mean? Like, it's and it's probably not going to ever happen to them. The nurtured and loved by Sharat, like, and he's seems to be such a more open-minded individual towards the Western body and the Western mind.
But it can happen in all kinds of ways too, right? I mean, I don't know. I think it's in a way it's helpful. It's a helpful injury to recover from and to start the healing process from, because you get to explore new ways of being in the world.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think the other thing is, like, with like senior teachers now who may have gone through that, teaching their students is going to be a lot different. And when it comes down to like that understanding of nurturing mental aspect, the spiritual aspect, the feminine or the male aspect is going to be a lot more intuitive to the student's needs, and that's something that is what everybody needs, I think.
Yeah, and it's interesting that it kind of coincided as well with this sort of, I guess, demolishing of hierarchy in general, right? Where like universally the world is changing and people are changing.
And paradoxically also so many more structures in the world are going towards fascism.
Yeah, because
we're going in different directions here, I think.
Well, when anything's uncertain, people look for certainty, and so that's why there's that tendency, right?
Which is why we went to a cult in the first place, because our childhoods were a disaster.
Yeah. But then I think when that comes down, when you've had that experience of that deep disappointment, then you're less likely, I hope, maybe, to just like fully reinvest in another kind of hierarchy.
Yeah, definitely. You
right?
are. Yeah, definitely. But also I think your experience. I like that saying where, experience builds, wisdom, experience builds knowledge, knowledge builds wisdom. And it's through that wisdom that you carry on. But hopefully it's that wisdom on the positive side rather than the negative side.
Yeah. But then you can also, share, which is like what you're doing too, right? Like share this learning. And I think that we're seeing that more in the community, right? Like there's a very different way that I would say the majority of teachers are teaching now than when you were coming up in the system or when we were coming up in the system, which was quite strict and kind of militant.
Insane.
Yeah. I had fantasized about joining the army. A lot of the men in my family had, and it was something I was really drawn to was discipline and structure, given the chaos that was around. And yoga was perfect. It was like, oh, this ticks every box that I'm looking for as far as discipline and structure. And this is the thing for me. I'm going to put my flag here, and that'll be great. And now I'm an integrated and solid human being. And then it gets blown up, which is perfect. That's really helpful to actually become an integrated human being, is to realize identifying your sense of self-confidence and worth into an exterior structure or personality is not actually going to fix and heal your childhood wounds.
Exactly.
I got a
bingo.
Got a pointy finger.
Well, that was it.
And that was it. Russell.
Yeah.
Nailed that one.
Mic drop.
That's a mic drop.
Yeah, you got to go in to do the work, right?
Oh, well, I don't want to end the podcast on that. I wanted to talk about my hamstring injury. I love telling that story.
No, we don't have time.
We don't
Sorry.
Oh, man.
I did a number on myself. Full avulsion, mate. Full avulsion.
Yeah.
Ripped it right off. I'd seen it on a magazine cover, on a yoga journal magazine cover, and I was like, I want to do that. And I did it.
Oh, they're the worst too. What did they have to stitch it back on? Did they?
I would have, if I had the fucking money.
Yeah. Oh man,
you're still there, hanging out in his calf.
Oh god. Oh no, really?
Yeah, full avulsion. It's. I was 21. I'm 48.
But I think there's 4 hamstring tendons, right? So it's just one of them.
The 2 legs, between the 2 legs, you mean? Or is there 4 on each one?
There's 4 on each.
There's 4 on each one?
There's go for it. Hey, you got others too that you can support.
I was in Hanumanasana, and I went forward to touch my face to my knee. I was in full splits, And I did it on the one leg. It was like, ooh, I'm feeling flexible today. I'm going to do it on the other one. And I felt the femur come out of the socket. And I felt like old cobwebs. And then simultaneous to that, my roommate heard a shotgun blast in the other room. And that was my hamstring exploding. And then I laid down because like, oh, I've fucked myself. I've broken my leg or something. These things shouldn't have happened. There's like some terrible sound. And so 28 years later, if I sit in a chair, I'll feel it.
But, oh man, that sucks. But do you know which one it was? Was it one of the two medial ones, or was it one of the
I can't
bicep
do
femoris?
Just
The outside
describe
one.
it. I can't do a forward split, but I can do a side split easy.
So it's probably the outside one. That's
the
that's
outside
insane. That's insane.
He obviously doesn't need it.
Well, I don't know. Oh my gosh!
That's why God gives us 4.
Well, there's three hammies, but one's got two heads. Yeah, quads
2
have got
heads.
4.
Okay.
Yeah, but I had a patient the other day, and she was she got adjusted, and it must have been Richie C, and that the contact of the bind was enough to actually snap one of her flexor carpi muscles off the bone, like a 35 millimeter separation.
Oh my gosh!
Really?
Yeah.
Richie Austin a C?
Yeah, just by how the shoulder comes into it, and it just like yeah.
Wow.
Oh, it's so dangerous. Do you heard about that? My ex-wife's roommate in England broke her femur and Mauritius in a D. Did you hear about that?
I did. Yeah. Oh no, actually no, I didn't hear that. I heard about the other chick. What was her name? Who got adjusted in one of the third series poses and broke her femur.
I didn't hear about that.
Also sounds terrible.
Yeah. Hopefully no one new Ashtanga is listening to this. No, but that's insane that happened to you, Russell. But
so what did you do with your patient that came in with the tendon?
Well, it's obviously it's the same with Russell. Like, there's nothing much you can kind of do. Just can't do, I guess, down dog, weight bear with on her wrist anymore.
Do you think I should get it stapled like right now? I should go try and get it stapled.
It's too late. It's too late.
No, we can fix it.
It's atrophied.
No, Dan can fix it. Dan can fix it.
Well, you could go see your surgeon and see what they say, but they might be able to attach it somehow these days. But it'd be pretty. Your body's probably well adapted by now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well adapted.
So.
Maladapted.
At least now that it's, I guess, basically if it's ruptured, it doesn't hurt, right? So
nah, it's fine.
It's only when it's slightly attached that it'll hurt. So
yeah, well.
Oh,
so I just
keep going.
I just keep going. I try not to sit in chairs, so I don't sit in chairs anymore. Fuck chairs. Who needs? If I also like a car chair is also a chair, by the way.
Yeah.
So I have to sit in half lotus while I'm driving, which is not safe.
No, not safe.
Well, like, have you brought a specific car based on like to sit in? Is it a half lotus or lotus car?
That'd be cool.
Because that could be a great marketable kind of thing for yogis, like the lotus car
it's
chair.
My left. Just thank God it's my left leg and not my right, because I would not be able to drive for long distances if it was my right leg, because I wouldn't be able to push the pedals.
But what about cruise control? You get those.
I use cruise control. Yeah, for sure. Whenever I,
I will admit, I do do cruise control on long trips in Australia and sit in Lotus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not safe.
Also,
It's not safe whatsoever, but it's comfortable.
Okay.
Yeah, it's more comfortable. Which is a rare thing for Anglo-Saxon people to say.
That's true.
That is a rare...
Oh,
That's
gosh.
what yoga did to our culture. Is like there's white people walking around comfortable sitting in lotus.
It's true.
It's weird. That's a weird one.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Funny thing.
Well, tell everyone where they can find you and come get all of their body, mind, spiritual needs healed.
You can fix us, mate.
Oh, look, hey, well, I do want to say if anybody does have an injury they're working through, they don't know where to go, like they're just even if they just want to like contemplate it, they just want to talk through it, just give us a shout out, email. You can reach me through my website, osteofix.com.au, or just through my email, dan.fanthorpe@gmail.com. Or hit me up on my social media, Facebook, Instagram. Happy to kind of talk. Also, I want to, I guess, reach out to, because I'm going to be doing some research in the next few years based on, what does our system need? What educational platforms do you guys want? Would it be helpful for you to have a course on inflammation when a student injures themselves, or simple triaging? Like, what questions do you ask a student that enters your door? Because I know students just will not.
That's the manual. It's a manual that you could use for as a Meister student, as a Meister teacher. I got Dan's book. 1 second. I'm going to go back and read that. What do I do in a triage situation for a hamstring explosion in my room?
Exactly. So that's
amazing.
That's what I'm working on at the moment, and hopefully I want to get it Mysore approved. That's my aim goal. It's a long shot, I know, but
we're the ones to approve it, mate. You don't need anyone else but your friends and colleagues.
Exactly. But
totally.
Whatever I can do for the Ashtanga system and bringing it up, furthering the longevity, and especially for me, actually primary health care professionals actually understand and respect our system. They know and can trust that they can send somebody to an Ashtanga Mysore teacher and know that the teacher is going to be receptive to their needs.
Right.
I guess that's the one thing that I aim in this lifetime.
Just get Eileen to sign off on it. It's fine.
I will. Actually, I'm going to talk to Eileen soon. I will go.
Yeah, good.
Thanks, guys.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you. So much
awesome.
Fun to connect
great
with
to
you.
talk, and great to see you again. And hopefully we'll see you again soon. If you're an Aussie, come this way. Love to see you, mate. Or come to New Zealand, and I'll show you some dairy farms and some sheep.
Do you feel stuck in a cycle of working 24/7 without seeing real results? Do you wish someone would just come in and tell you, do this first, do this second, and you're going to have amazing results? Did you know that 7 out of 10 small businesses fail? That is not your future. It is 100% possible to have the freedom and the health and the time for yourself and your family and make the money that you want to make, that's going to give you freedom, stability, flexibility, and experience all the goodness your heart is craving. You can study and learn from Marie Forleo in this 3-day Dream Business Bootcamp. She is an entrepreneur that built a multi-million-dollar empire from the ground up, starting with nothing, no investors, just herself. And she's here to give you the strategies and the roadmap to bring your passion, your dreams, your business to life. You don't need to be everywhere all the time. You don't need to be doing funny dances on social media. You need to just know how to really connect and create real connection with your clients, with your followers, with the people who need you the most. And this Dream Business Bootcamp is going to help you figure out how to do that. So if you have at all an interest, a dream in your heart that you would like to bring into the world, even if you're not sure what your business might be, even if it's just an inclination of, I have this idea and I'd like some support in manifesting it. I'd like to know some steps to help me start moving the dial forward to get there. Be sure you join this free offering. It's awesome. It's incredible. It's 3 days, the Dream Business Bootcamp with Marie Forleo, my personal business mentor. She's so much fun. It's such a fun 3 days with her, and I hope that you join. It's amazing. So jump in today, find the links in the show notes or on my Instagram profile, Harmony Slater Official, and I look forward to seeing you there. That's it. We've concluded another episode of the Finding Harmony podcast. I just want to thank you so much for doing the work that changes the world, starting with yourself. It truly does make a huge difference. Please make sure you have your automatic downloads turned on wherever you listen so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. I have so much more magic I can't wait to share with you. Lastly, if you're on Instagram, I love connecting and hearing from you. So come on over and say hello at Finding Harmony Podcast. And you can also come say hello to me personally at Harmony Slater Official. Thank you again for being here. I cannot wait to share more with you in our next episode.